All right, so I'm hitting record here. Cool. What's going on, guys? Dr. Matt here, host of the RhodyStrength podcast. We have another great guest on today, Tina Hong. So happy to have you on. I know we just finished up 6 weeks of the Newport Ladies Fit for Golf seminar group, and it was awesome. I had a blast. I learned a lot about golfing and a lot about mindset. So I'm excited we get to kind of do the podcast after that finished up. So great to have you on.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I had a great time and you were just amazing. You were just amazing. The ladies loved you and you really just showed up such in a big way of being in a supportive position and really working us out. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. And so a big part of the reason I have you on today is just to talk about more about what you were doing at the golf event, mindset, how you, I'll give you a little background on you. So you're a certified executive health coach. You've worked with a lot of high achieving, busy business owners, entrepreneurs, and you've worked successfully with people to lose up to 100 pounds of body fat, change body composition, build lean muscle, control cravings, eat more purposefully, mindfully, heal fatigue, increase energy, and improve biometrics, reversing pre-disease states such as hypertension, blood pressure, pre-diabetes, and chronic digestive issues. So overall health, essentially. So, and I know you've had a pretty extensive background, and I want to obviously dive into kind of where you started and how you got to where you're at. But just to start, we're just going to start off with some rapid fire questions just to get things moving. So first question that I want to start off with is, and this could be, I know you're in Westport now, correct? Westport, Mass?
Westport.
So I want to start off with favorite coffee. And then for a lot of the people I interview, that they'll say coffee just in the area where they're from. But I know you spent a lot of time in New York. So if you have a favorite coffee shop in New York, that's totally fine too. So Rhode Island, New York, Westport, where do you like to go for coffee?
Well, I spent a lot of time, almost 10 years in Montclair, New Jersey. And that's really where I kind of started my business. And there's a lot of good coffee shops around there. It's just about 30 minutes outside of New York City. And there's this little cafe called Mish Mish, which is owned by a Lebanese chef. And he had amazing coffee there. But I have a thought about coffee. I'm not picky. I'm sort of picky about coffee, actually. I don't really go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts if I don't have to. I prefer to go to little coffee shops who have organic coffee. And there's a huge difference between regular conventional coffee and organic coffee. So if they have organic coffee, I'm all in because, conventional coffee is polluted with pesticides. So I try to stay away from that.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I didn't even I've heard organic coffee is better. I've seen it on the shelves comparing regular organic coffee, but I didn't know that much about the pesticides and pollution that goes into that. When did you make that switch?
Oh, well, it's probably been a long time. I mean, I'm a coffee lover and I think coffee is good for you in terms of antioxidants and,
Mm.
just in terms of regulating as well. But I guess I made the switch probably, I don't know, probably about 10 years ago or more,
Mm.
because organic coffee tastes better. And more and more coffee shops, little boutique coffee shops are offering more organic options, which is good. It tastes better.
Mm.
And coffee beans are actually one of the most polluted, production, farming fruits.
Interesting.
And yeah, they spray it down because it attracts bugs and pests.
Sure. Okay.
And so when your coffee is coming from Costa Rica, from, Africa, from other countries, or even locally, most of the time it's coming from different countries. When they're mass producing coffee, they have to spray it down to save their crops through all kinds of climate changes and pest changes and so forth. So anyway, it's just something to keep in mind. If you can find organic, definitely organic. If you can make your own coffee and get the organic beans and have it fresh, all the better.
Even better. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was treating a client for a while who spent some of his time in Hawaii, and
Mm,
he was saying because they have coffee beans in Hawaii, and he's like, "Hey, this I know you've had good coffee before, but this is extremely fresh." And
right.
it was really good. Yeah. So I could
Yeah.
definitely see that.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't have one specific favorite spot,
Mm,
but I definitely seek out, organic if possible.
cool. I like that answer.
Yeah.
So next question I got for you is favorite restaurant. And then same thing, open-ended, could be New Jersey, New
Mm.
York, Rhode Island, Mass.
Mm. So I guess in Newport, one of my favorite places is the cookhouse, the Clark Cookhouse.
Nice.
It's always just a really good go-to spot. It's fun in terms of an atmosphere, and the food is on point all the time.
Mm.
And their sushi is awesome. So I feel like they have an amazing menu, and the chef is just totally on point all the time. So that's probably one of my favorite spots in the area right now for for an occasional drink, and also for the food for
Oh,
sure.
totally. Yeah, that's a great spot. That's a classic Newport spot. That's a good choice.
Yeah, my
Uh,
favorite.
next question I got for you is in the gym. So we're shifting topics a little bit. In the gym, what's your, and this could just be recent, something that you've been liking, but your favorite exercise, your favorite lift, your favorite movement? What's something where you go into the gym like, okay, I really want to hit this today. I really want to do this today.
Yeah, so I always make sure that I'm working on my lower body strength, because in it helps your posture, it
Mm,
helps my golf game,
mm-hmm.
all of that. But basically, doing just lifted squats is something that I try to incorporate at least twice a week, whether I'm in the gym or not. Even sometimes when I'm home, and I don't have a full workout lined up. Just doing weighted squats can make a huge difference in terms of strength. And during COVID, I had to step out of the gym, and I noticed my body being actually weaker,
Mm.
and I was like experiencing like knee twinges and hip twinges. So I was like regularly going to chiropractor to help me get adjusted and aligned. But really, when you start experiencing those kind of like twingy things, when you're generally pretty healthy and active, you know that your body's getting weaker. So that's one of the lessons that I had in terms of body composition at Newport Fit for Golf is if you're not getting stronger, you're just getting weaker, and
Definitely.
definitely experienced that. So lifted squats is probably my favorite.
I like that. That's great. That's a great answer and a great example and
Yeah,
great lesson too, all in one.
yeah.
And we're changing topics again just slightly. What's a place that either you've traveled recently, or you can answer both, or somewhere where you have planned to travel, or somewhere maybe where you want to travel?
Yeah. Well, I haven't traveled recently, not in a few years,
Mm,
especially during pandemic times. But I am excited that in less than 2 weeks, on May 1st, I'm headed to Nayarit, Mexico, for an unplugged yoga retreat with no cell phone, no Wi-Fi for 6 whole days, and then I'll be off on my own for 4 days. But I'm really excited about that. So I'm going. I'm going with Troy City Yoga with
hmm.
Abby.
Shout out Troy City.
I know, exactly. So I'm excited about that retreat coming up. And then one of the other places that I was going to do during this time, because it'll be my birthday time, a big milestone birthday. Um, I was planning on going to Bali, but that all got iced. So in the fall, I might join Troy City again to go to Bali together.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Have you been on a trip like that before, like a yoga retreat?
Um, you know what? Not specifically, no.
That's gonna be so much fun. That's gonna be so cool.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to just like cleansing from electronics and detoxing from, just being in a really positive state. I'm going to be
Mm,
spending time writing on my book, and just really uninterrupted time, just focusing on what I really want, and how things are gonna, just planning mode.
Awesome. And we're jumping ahead, but I'm interested. Let's quickly talk about your book that you're writing.
Yeah. So, well, I started writing my book called 60 in Stilettos last year. It's a book about women being empowered about their health and relationships and life. And basically, it encapsulates my coaching program in a book format. And I got halfway through writing it, and um, I was playing around. Do I want to open this up to men also? Because men need to receive this message of turning their health around before it's too late. It has a bank of stories, life stories, and lessons that I've learned in taking care of my father, who had stage 4 cancer for 10 years, and that's really what brought me into coaching. And this need, or kind of this passion for helping people turn their health around before it's too late, because you never know when your calling card is going to be called. And especially as in midlife, we kind of power through life and days, and we kind of rely on conventional wisdom of what's necessary. But really, through the power of mindset transformations and habit transformations, this is what the book is about. So the title of the book might change, and I'm going to be putting more analogies into the book around golf as a metaphor for life, and maybe geared towards more amateur social golfers who I often see on the course, that may not necessarily be at their best health, but they're whacking these sticks around that in high force momentum, and that it becomes a risk in terms of injury. And as you know, if your foundation is not strong enough, and you're doing some kind of sports activity, whether it's social or not, or competitive, you're really kind of putting yourself at risk, especially in midlife. And our health is our wealth, and our mobility is our wealth. And that's so critical
Yeah,
to just, yeah.
that's huge. Yeah, and to go along with that, like you said, the foundation, like it's a common saying with a pyramid's only as tall as as strong as its foundation. So, and then I think that just rings so true for people. And that foundation could, yeah, it's physical, it's mobility, but and we're gonna get into a lot of it too, is just like that psychosocial, like mental, and how you're handling like stress, like day to day, nutrition, all that stuff makes such a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That's really cool. So that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. And I guess a good segue to the next question is one book that you've read or listened to, maybe on Audible, maybe your favorite book, or one that you've read recently, or something maybe that's just like impacted your life.
Yeah. So I'm constantly reading multiple books at one time. It's like I have books around me all the time, and I'm a constant studier. I have books on nutrition. I have books on disease and how disease happens. I have books on addiction and how people become addicted to certain things, and what happens in their brain chemistry that relies on addictions to kind of get them through day to day. And then, I have tons of books on self-help and empowerment and all of that, and mindset work. But I guess one of the books that I really like and enjoy is a Joe Dispenza book called Breaking the Habit of Being You. And a lot of what I've been doing kind of rang true in that book, in terms of, you are the authority of you, and how you create expansiveness is really up to you. So if you're stuck in the habit of living life and making choices based on scarcity and fear, then we're really limiting our possibilities. And that's really what I'm all about. So I love that book, Breaking the Habit of Being You by Joe Dispenza. There's so many others, but I even get inspirations from Buddhist philosophers and teachers like Jack Kornfeld, Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Buddhist philosopher, and he passed away, I believe last year. but I like to bring Buddhist philosophies into wellness, where you're letting go of negative thoughts and negative feelings, and really focusing on spirituality and bringing transformation through those doorways and pathways. So I get inspirations from everywhere. But yeah, I have kind of my nutrition, spirituality. I have so many books that I'm constantly studying. And
Awesome.
yeah. Mhm.
That's a great balance too for each aspect of your specialty. You're reading books on each one, so that's great.
Yeah.
What was the name of that author again? Is it Jack Kornfeld?
Jack Kornfeld. He has written several books on Buddhist philosophy, on around ego and the Buddha's brain, ways of happiness, love, and vitality. And it's really like mindfulness work.
Mm,
So he's got a slew of books out there.
very cool. All right,
Mm,
I'm writing that down. I'm taking that
mm,
into my notes.
yeah.
Next question we got favorite podcast. And if you're not a podcast listener, that's totally fine. But and this also could be a podcast that you just find entertaining, a podcast that's educational, or something that's just like easy listening.
Yeah. So I'm not a huge like podcast listener, but one the podcast that I do like, because her name is Leanne Vogel. She is very much an advocate of keto eating, low carb keto diets, and she has a lot of great nutritional information in her podcast, and she really speaks from knowledge and science. So I like listening to her every once in a while. And I like inspirational speakers like Mel Robbins, and so many. It's kind of like I listen to podcasts like I kind of read so many different books.
Mm.
I kind of have a smattering of where I jump in. But yeah, so I hope that answers that
No,
question.
that's good. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if you're reading a couple different books at the same time. You probably you're pick and choosing your podcast in the same way, which is
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
You're getting a wide variety.
yeah.
Next question, similar. If you're not big on Instagram, that's totally fine. That's a valid answer. But same question. Maybe favorite Instagram account, something maybe that again could be educational, inspiring, entertaining. Someone where you see their posts and like, oh, or maybe you like look for their posts as they come up.
Yeah, I don't have I follow a lot of people in both, like, fitness, nutrition, self-empowerment, um diet and food, you know.
Mm,
I tend to kind of lean towards Instagram accounts that offer different kinds of ways of eating,
mm,
around low carb and more ketogenic diets, and offering recipes. That's always fun to follow, isn't it? That's kind of like more entertainment driven.
totally.
But yeah, I don't have any specific one. I follow a lot of different Instagram accounts, so I like same thing. Like, I don't utilize Instagram, and I don't know, it's not so much entertainment for me, but it's
Mm,
constantly about learning
sure.
and self improvement and growth,
Yeah.
personal growth. So those are the kinds of topics and podcasts and books that
Mhm.
I definitely lean towards.
Cool. I like that. And while we're on the topic of ketogenic, I know that just from listening to some of your talks and speeches at the Newport Ladies Fit for Golf, you're a big fan of the ketogenic diet, just for like a multitude of reasons. But I want to know if you could explain that, how that can be beneficial for people.
Yeah, so a lot of times people get really confused between paleo
Mm,
and ketogenic diets. And if you look at paleo, what I say is it's really an approach to eating. And paleo is philosophically around an ancestral diet. So basically, what was available to us if we were hunting or fishing or picking berries off trees or plants. It's really a form of ancestral eating, where
mm,
mass manufactured, mass produced foods weren't available to us at one time. So the evolution of paleo or ancestral diets today is really like people have done carnivore diet and paleo, but paleo is not necessarily low carb.
Mm.
So the difference between that and ketogenic diets is keto is really also, well, back to paleo. Paleo is about eating as close to the source. So
Mm.
unprocessed, not in a package, not in a wrapper, not in a box or a can, eating as closest to the source, whole foods oriented, in its purest form as possible.
Mm.
Maybe you didn't hunt and fish for it, but basically without a lot of production around it. And most people fail in their diets and weight loss when they rely too much on convenience. So I like that the style of eating or the approach to eating, because basically it removes a lot of mass production chemicals and processed foods and sugars and added salts that we really don't need, and that kind of that interferes with our natural palates, and people get addicted to sugar and processed foods because of that. Anyway, so ketogenic is low carb. Same philosophy about eating as closest to the source. Ketogenic is a high fat, moderate protein diet. So I think that applies really well, and there's more and more science coming out of it around how ketogenic diets are good for brain health, are good for any kind of seizure activity. There's all this crazy science that are coming out of this. And especially for people in midlife, ketogenic diets work really well. So it doesn't mean that you should just eat all the bacon that you want, but it's about incorporating healthy fats, and that those healthy fats actually help our brain chemistry, and it helps our moods. It helps kind of reset in terms of where our fuel source is coming from. And so I lean towards and it kind of eliminates the carbohydrate, the volume of carbohydrates in your diet. So ketogenic naturally, because it's high fat, moderate protein, it is low carb naturally. So technically a strict ketogenic diet is less than 30 grams of carbs a day. And for most people who are eating a standard American diets today, they're actually consuming more than 200 grams of carbs a day. And if you're, medically obese or, have been living a junk food culture or culture life and a fast food life for a long time, that is what you've been hooked on. So, is it for everybody? Not necessarily. And there's so many ways you can go wrong with it. For some people, actually eating too much fat is actually going to make you fat. So you have to kind of monitor, where the transition comes from. But the first place for a lot of people where they can find success is just eliminating a lot of the processed foods and chemicals in their diet, because that affects your digestion. It affects how your liver functions and your detoxification pathways. So yeah, it's good to be under the guide of someone who knows what they're doing to help you get through those transitions. It's hard to go right into keto and do it successfully. So the first place is just eliminating a lot of the junk or the processed chemicals in your diet right off the bat.
And I think a good segue to that too is you talked about, how hard that is to just make those eliminations. And it's obviously it's good to have someone to hold you accountable, like maybe like a health coach or just like a partner, like doing it with you. And you touched on this already, but one of the reasons it's so hard to give those stuffs up is because we can get like addicted to these chemicals, sugars, added salts. And you had mentioned that at the Newport Fit for Golf event, you had showed an example of a standard American diet, which we would consider, if or someone on set looking in like, oh, that's relatively healthy. There was like, I think the example you use, like okay, we started off the day with like an apple, some eggs, some toast, and then a Luna bar, and then an iced coffee from Starbucks, and then like
Right.
a salad. And so it's like, okay, this looks pretty healthy. And I forget the exact example, so you can probably clear that up. But then you
Right.
showed like, hey, look at how much sugar you consumed in some of these quote unquote looks pretty healthy. You actually went way over the daily what's normal.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where people go wrong is they kind of, and do you know how many times so many people say, I know what I'm doing, but I'm not doing it. Or I think I eat pretty healthy. Those are the two things that people say to me when they first come on to my initial consultation. So what's going on with you and doing a health intake? And it's funny because when we actually dive into their total consumption for a day and how they're eating, the manner in which they're eating, and what they're eating, it's completely off track and not
Mm,
supporting their goals or their fat loss goals or even just hormone balancing goals.
mm,
So yes, that diagram that I showed you just gave an example of how much hidden sugars and chemicals are in foods that prevent us from actually losing body fat. And we don't realize how much it accumulates. That sugar snack or that Luna bar, all the carbohydrates that go into your total consumption accumulate to a much bigger total than you think. And just in doing, and a lot of health foods that are marketed as healthy are not healthy at
mm,
all.
mm,
Like, and like Cheerios is not healthy for you. That's like pure sugar crack.
mhm,
And
mhm.
like we grew up thinking that, being marketed to thinking that Cheerios is actually a health food that actually lowers cholesterol, but actually is completely untrue. It's completely untrue. So things like that, or even yogurt, like we think that flavored yogurt is a healthy probiotic food, but it's not at all. It has 24 grams of sugar in it. And this is the stuff that, believe it or not, keeps Americans hooked. It keeps us hooked in terms of our flavor palette and our propensity for our level of satiety in terms of the amount of sugar is so high that when they transition into a low carbohydrate or a paleo whole foods diet, they're like, oh my God, this is so bland. But there's ways around that of incorporating spices, incorporating different techniques of cooking and things like that can help you transition your palate and your propensity to need that sugar.
Mm,
Sugar addiction is a mindset thing, it's a chemical thing, and it's also emotional. So, I get into more of that kind of work in terms of what are you really missing? You think you're missing something, and you're trying to satisfy that missing through sugar and that dopamine hit. But oftentimes what I've learned in working with clients who have had the need to lose up to 100 pounds of body fat is, it's much more, it's deeper than that. It's really kind of deeply seated in not feeling like they're getting what they want in
mm,
life or not feeling satisfied. So there's a deeper emotional part that becomes missing, and that's kind of drives addiction. Sugar
mm,
addiction drives needing that dopamine hit in other ways, whether it's through food, whether it's through gambling, through alcohol, or whatever it might be.
mm.
We tend to gravitate towards those crutches or the addictions, whether it be like a severe addiction or not. If you're constantly focused on needing that, then that's an addiction, according to the American Psychological Association. If you are making decisions to absolutely get that in your day, that means you're addicted.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. It's yeah, and I like what you said there too about when you're working with a client, maybe who's someone who's really obese, and you're trying to kind of like peel back the layers and unravel. Okay, like
Mm.
why are we searching for these dopamine spikes during the day, whether it's like a gambling, sugar, like that type of stuff. When you work with a client like that, do you spend a lot of time like trying to like dive deep and like kind of peel back some of those layers?
Yeah, so initially, we will go through food eliminations and I'll help them transition. So, like from the mechanic standpoint,
Mm,
I'll teach them what to eat and what not to eat and transition them to
mm,
get unhooked. So, and there's ways to step them into a way of feeling natural and satiated through food,
mm,
the food mechanics. But oftentimes, so that's about 6 weeks of eliminations where they start feeling different. They actually start losing weight. They actually, inflammation goes down, even chronic pain starts like quieting down. So after 6 weeks, they continue in that manner of eating. But during that time, after 6 weeks, we start getting to habits and
mm.
lifestyle. Like what exactly? Let's unravel about like what keeps you in that place of wanting that bowl of ice cream at the end of the night, or every single night for night after night.
Right.
Like, and so part of the habit transformations is looking at your everyday lifestyle. Listen, you know, you're not going to be able to change things until you break patterns. That's the bottom line. And all of your daily patterns are built in from the minute you wake up to the time you go to sleep. And not a lot of people take that inventory of actually what is actually triggering, different kinds of habitual activities that's not serving them. So we go through that evaluation and seeing how we can make weekly shifts. And then we get into the deeper mindset work, of really identifying, becoming the best version of yourself, and having that vision of becoming the best version of yourself starts creating different kinds of behaviors and
Mm.
choices. And that's the deeper work that gets into, beyond the mechanics of eating and diet and nutrition, but really gets into permanent ways and lifestyle of taking better care of your health in general, and where it's not feeling like a diet, and that it becomes a natural part of how you do things.
I like that. I'm sure you've read the book too, the book Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great book. I read it relatively recently, and something you just said there made me think of it, of
Mhm.
how like you almost have to. The mindset's so important. You have to almost change like the person you are, like in your day to day, like what you're doing. And there's a part in the book where he says like, obviously there's a habits are so like you need to work. It would be super helpful to work with someone to change habits because they are very tough to break. They're tough to change.
Right.
But there's a part in the book where he talks about people who are cigarette smokers, which is obviously highly it's tough to break that habit.
Mhm.
And he said if a part of it is like a mindset shift of like, okay, I'm if you're saying like, okay, I'm trying to quit smoking,
Mhm.
it's a lot harder to actually make that change versus that mindset shift of saying, okay, I'm not a cigarette smoker. It's like just the
Mhm.
way you view it is
Absolutely.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
you know.
So when our thoughts create our behaviors, create our choices and our actions.
Mhm.
So I'm also an NLP practitioner, neuro linguistic programming practitioner, which is a psychological framework around how we define our experiences. And a lot of times in our subconscious thoughts, through growing up, or working in corporate life, or all the things that get stored away in our memory in terms of who we think we're supposed to be, that gets this like permanently encrusted kind of belief of who we are. And a lot of times with people who have significant weight loss or health turnaround that's necessary for them, to feel more mobile and feel less pain and so forth, they've already resigned to the fact that that's who they are.
Mm,
They resign to the fact that it's their DNA, it's genetic, or that they're just aging, and they already resign to the fact that what how their condition is kind of what's been given to them. And it's a very powerless position or mindset of thinking. But when you are able to reframe your definitions about who you are and what you want, and then why you're making the choices you make, something amazing happens. you
Mm.
get into a more expansive state. You start seeing yourself differently. A lot of times people who are significantly obese have come to me and they're in a mindset of self-loathing secretly for a long time. They literally cannot even look at themselves in the mirror because they don't like themselves,
Mm.
and for whatever reasons, traumas in the past, or uh, people telling them they're not good enough, or they already have this built-in belief that they're not good enough,
Mm.
that they're not enough, that you're coming up short. All these negative stories that come into replay, especially when you come across interference in life, especially in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. There's a lot of different challenges. A lot of 50% of adults go through divorce, go through death and loss,
Mm.
go through, changes, or even dealing with children who are struggling with addiction, or parents who are aging and kind of, going through, terminal illnesses, so much stuff going on. And the thing is, what we believe ourselves to be and how we see ourselves actually can either stop us, or we can actually redefine that and propel us forward in a whole new way. Instead of making choices out of fear, out of safety and protection, when you can reframe and create new definitions around what is possible and seeing yourself differently, that's when things switch in their brain and they start doing things automatically. Yeah, it's not even just like petty things about should I have that bowl of ice cream or not. They take more strategic risk, and are bolder with their decisions, are more confident, and it comes from a much more self-loving place.
Mm.
When you're coming from a self-loathing place, in secret,
Mm.
and a lot of people are walking around in secret hating themselves. That really that shows up and manifests in the decisions that they make for themselves, for their well-being in general.
It sounds like a lot of times without them even knowing it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
completely subconscious. It's
Yeah.
the default. It's the
Mm.
default position, because our human being human is about survival, right?
Sure.
So from ancestral times, we're it's all about surviving our harsh landscapes and conditions around us. So when you're in fear and survival mode, you're going to make very different decisions. But a lot of times that gets built up for so long that becomes our default, like just to protect and just to survive. I
Yeah.
have to do this to survive. And when you stay and dwell in that mindset, and not really do anything to change that, then you're really limiting your possibilities for greater health, greater wealth, greater success, and a new definition of yourself, which is
Sure.
totally possible no matter what age you are.
That's great. That's powerful. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. That was really well said. Kind of along those same lines, talking about kind of that feeling or state of like always like that fight or flight, like fear-based decision state. There's something you mentioned earlier that I'd written down that I wanted you to talk a little bit more about was the idea of like hormone balancing. And if
Mhm.
I'm taking that, if those two things don't connect, I'm taking that out of context, that's totally fine. But I was thinking you were kind of relating that back to like the stress hormones.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are in midlife and you're trying to lose weight, and if you're a woman, especially going through changes, hormonal changes, and you're also working and living a very stressed out life, and a lot of times that's a default for people.
Mm.
Like, I thrive on stress. How many times have you heard that? Like, I thrive on stress. That's better for me. But a lot of times when we're enduring constant and chronic stress for a long time, what it chemically does is it raises our cortisol hormones, and
Mm.
cortisol will shut down insulin. It's literally a biological response. So if your stress is at a 8, 9, 10 constantly on a day-to-day basis, and you think what you're eating and how you're changing your diet is going to help you, and just because you think you're going to be on that treadmill for hours and hours every single week, none of that matters, because that 8, 9, 10 level of stress is going to completely sabotage everything good you're doing. It's totally, that is a hormone. Cortisol is a hormone, and it trumps insulin, your insulin response, which, is made to help you convert, what you're eating into energy. And so, and if you're not converting it into energy, you're storing body fat. And so when cortisol shows up, you're automatically going into storing body fat immediately.
Mm.
It just shuts insulin down.
Yeah,
That's
that's
science. Yeah.
yeah, that's something like, I mean, I went to schools, exercise science, went to PT school, and we learned about obviously stress. We're like, oh yeah, stress impacts this too. Stress impacts this too. But until you kind of describe, you also described that during the Newport Fit for Golf event. I'm like, oh, like just the way you connected the dots there. I'm like, okay, yes, I think we all kind of understand like stress can affect us, blah, blah, blah. But the way you connected the dots, you're like, okay, not only does stress affect this, but this is how it affects it. And this is the level it affects it. And it's actually very important. So
Right. When
yeah.
you're in a joyful, calm state,
Mm,
your digestion is better. Your
mm,
inflammation goes down. Like there's physiological changes as the level of stress rises up in terms of arousal, on a daily basis. If you're constantly in fight or flight mode of stress, then you're not breathing as much.
mm,
Your heart rate is either too rapid or too low. Your eyes, you see less in terms, your eyes become dilated, your vessels become dilated. Your body is actually shutting down when your level of stress goes up. So as your level of stress goes up, even your digestive system doesn't function as healthily as it should be. So there are physiological responses to the level of stress that you endure on a day-to-day basis, and people underestimate that. They kind of say, "Oh, I'll get through this time. I'll get through this time," but meanwhile, things show up because they've been putting it under the rug for so long and not dealing with it.
yeah. That's huge. Yeah, I really like that. I think that's a underappreciated topic that really ties into each piece of this. That's
Mhm.
big. So uh we're coming up close to an hour, and I do
Wow.
want to be respectful of your time, but I want to hit a couple more topics because I think there's a bunch of things we haven't hit yet that I think would be really interesting if you're okay with that.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Cool. So we don't have to spend too much time on this, but I think it would be interesting, and it's interesting for me too. Just to get a little bit into your history, kind of like what that process was from getting into the health coaching field, and then yeah, basically how that came about.
Yeah. So really, I was working. My early on career, I was working in design and innovation in consumer products companies. So I was trained to really think outside of the box, which is a different kind of job than most people have. Um, so I kind of bring those learnings into what I'm doing today. Always thinking outside of the box and looking outside of the adjacent categories, not just looking at what's been served to you, but really saying what else is an alternative. What are the alternatives? So, but prior to how I got into health coaching is for 10 years. My dad had a stage 4 cancer journey. So he was diagnosed in early 2000s and he died in 2011. And he had a stage 4 cancer the whole way through. So every kind of couple of years, there was another tumor, another cancer, or it just kept growing. And it was really frustrating to me. And during that time of his illness, I was going to night school. I was working in different companies. I I was not healthy. I was like totally stressed out on an adrenal overload, emotionally feeling stressed with the possibility my dad would not be able to walk me down the aisle if I ever got married, or not being around for the rest of my life. And I was only in my 30s, in my late 30s to early 40s.
Mm.
And so during that time, I really advocated at the Memorial Sloan Cancer Center in New York City. I was there so much and asking questions to the doctors. They thought I worked there. They're like, "Are you on staff?" And I'm like, "No, I just live here." But yeah, I felt like that was like a gift of mine, to be able to caretake for my dad and ask the right questions and advocate for his health journey, and the decisions that the doctors were making, in
Mm.
conventional cancer center world. So during that time, I learned a lot of life lessons, and once he died, I kind of buried my head in grief, and worked at a mega large corporate giant company, and traveled like 50% of the time, and drank too much and ate whatever the hell I wanted. And I was just kind of in this deep grief mode for a long time. And, um, I was, in charge of something very important in terms of coming up with $100 million consumer brand. And, um, you know, anyway, so I was just in a really bad state. I left the company because I just couldn't. I was not happy. I was not happy, and once I got out of it, and after my dad died, I just took a whole year off of taking care of myself and bringing my inflammation down, loving myself in every respect. I was like religious about yoga. I was going to yoga almost every single day. I would be crying on mats, like in Shavasana, just grieving and trying to find myself. And that's when I decided to get my certification in health coaching and really help people and take what I learned in my dad's journey with cancer to another level, and say, I want to help people. I want to make a bigger impact in people's lives. And I think I can do that. And so that's how I got into health coaching. And it's been a glorious journey of constant learning.
That's a great story. And I mean, it comes from I think a great place too, as far as like, you're able to take that experience and just learn so much from it that you're like, okay, I want to pass this along to other people too.
Absolutely. And it's, the biggest learning was I was able to see for myself and witness my dad's fear of this fine line between death and life, and how fragile it is. You never know when it's going to be taken away from you. And he was only in his early 60s when he went. And it's like, wow, you think that you have it made, and like you have everything, all life all kind of set up for you to retire and all of this stuff. But you never know what's going to happen. And again, you are the authority of you, and what the choices that we make today is seeding the next 20 years of our life. And I feel absolutely passionate that people can make the change. People can make the shift, and really advocating for their best health instead of just being complacent about it. And that's really where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that's great. I like that a lot. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so let's shift just a little bit. I just want you to kind of like list off. I know you had mentioned one of your we'll kind of go on the same lines. One of the education certifications you had, which was the neural
NLP.
speech
NLP.
NLP.
Mhm.
Okay, neurolinguist.
Neuro-linguistic programming. Mhm.
Awesome. Okay.
Mhm.
And you kind of mentioned that already. And you said your health coaching was through it was in New York, right?
Yeah, it's through the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And through continuing studies, through low carb nutrition conferences, and just ongoing studies with phenomenal personal trainers, and understanding how body composition changes due to nutrition.
Mm.
And so, it's real life application and experience that I bring in my health coaching program. And it's all science based, it's not
Mhm.
myth based, what people think it should be.
It's gotta have some roots in science for it to be
Yeah,
legit.
actually, yeah. You should check out Peter Attia. Peter Attia.
Okay.
Yeah, he is, I think he's a behavioral nutritionist, or I forget what his background is, but he is fantastic. And I follow him on Instagram,
Cool.
and he incorporates fitness and body composition changes and nutrition. Yeah.
Awesome. Good stuff. And I I want to ask. It kind of we're going off topic a little bit, but I want to ask this question just because I know you're so passionate about it. But any sports or hobby that you like to do? And I know like the obvious answer is golf, but
Yeah, so I love golf, and I've been playing for just a little over 10 years. And the saddest part of it is my dad played until he couldn't walk on the course anymore because he had
wow.
a brain tumor. He couldn't physically move, but he walked 18 holes when he was feeling strong enough, because he couldn't go back to his business, and he really got into golf later on in his life, and during his cancer journey. And the saddest thing is I really didn't get to play a full round of golf with him, which is
Mm.
a very sad story. But I always say I'm meeting my dad on the golf course, and I love doing it because it truly is, for me, it was kind of a way to play and really get into my mindset and challenge myself. It's kind of an individual sport. It's not so much, I mean, you can get into competitive play, but it really is about challenging yourself. And I really believe that golf is a metaphor for life and how you behaviorally do things and instinctually do things. And that's what is so phenomenal about it. And that's why I introduced at Newport Fit for Golf this whole, lesson plan around the inner game, the secrets of the inner game of golf. Because basically, for either new beginners or intermediate players, the mindset piece is about 90% of the game. It's not just about learning how to swing, it's about confidence, it's about removing self-doubt, it's about pacing yourself, all of those, things that are very important that apply to both life and golf. Yeah. So yeah, I
Totally.
do love it. Yeah.
That's great.
Mm.
Okay, and then let's see. So just looking through my last questions, I think we covered pretty much everything. All right, so we'll start to hit into the wrap up. So I know you mentioned some of the stuff already, like your book, but anything in store for the future and or anything else you want to shout out or plug?
Yeah, so I don't have dates on my calendar, but one way to find me is on my Instagram at Goodness M Life, or on Facebook, Goodness Multiplied, which is, my Living Well programs page. Um, the What I'm planning on doing this year, and especially over the next few months, is focusing all my workshops, virtual and in person, on the inner game.
Mm,
Whether you're a golfer or not, getting past stuck mindsets, getting past your default position of survival, fight or flight mode, getting past fear, the false evidence of appearing real, and really stepping into boldness and courageousness and confidence in a whole new way, seeing yourself differently, whether you're on the tee box during golf, or about to really do something really big for your business and life. Really being able to face uncertainty and discomfort, and the fear of failure, and surpassing that. So all of my workshops coming up over the summer and fall, in person, as well as virtual workshops, will be focused really heavily on that inner game.
very cool. I love it. That's
Yeah.
good stuff. All right. And then my last question I leave everybody with, and this can be a tricky one. So if you need a little bit to think about it, we can do that too. But if you have one favorite quote that you like, or one favorite mantra or saying, the way I describe it is you get a billboard on 95 on the highway, so everybody going by can see it.
Oh gosh, there's so many. I wasn't prepared to.
Sorry.
Gosh,
I put you on the spot.
no, that's totally fine. But it's like, God, there's so many. There's so many. Now I'm blanking too.
I know there's so many out there. And
There-
also, like, it doesn't have to be like your favorite, because I think that puts pressure on, but maybe just one that you've heard recently that you think is cool or that you like.
Well, I guess I host a weekly clubhouse. I don't know if you know Clubhouse, but I co-host a weekly clubhouse in the Empowerment Tribe. And this morning, it's with other coaches, and people drop in to get support and so forth. So it's just a really beautiful time of sharing and giving and servicing, and connecting with people from all over the world. It's Wednesdays at 9 a.m. on Clubhouse. You can find me. But one guy who I love, Brad Dalton, he wrote a book called The DNA of a Champion. He's also kind of a self-empowerment coach. And he said this today, which I'm going to quote him on.
All right, perfect.
Regrets will outlive longer than your fears.
Ooh,
Regrets
yeah.
will outlive your fears in life.
Regrets will outlive your fears in life.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not a famous quote, but Brad's pretty famous.
Hey, it's going to be famous now.
It is. And I love that because, and I'm going to permanently write that. Actually, that might be a quote in my book. Because I think living life with the regrets is unfortunate. And so we got to take our best shot every single moment and being so grateful for where we are in life. But if you allow fear to overtake your decisions and the way you do things, just know that later on, you may have those regrets if you allow those fears to get in the way. Totally. So, yeah. So.
And what was his name again that said that?
Brad Dalton. Yeah, he wrote a book called The DNA of a Champion. Cool. Yeah.
Make sure I credit him on that one.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, that wraps up the podcast. Was awesome to have you on. You dropped a lot of knowledge. So thank you so much for that, Tina.
Drop some bombs.
You dropped some knowledge bombs. Yeah.
Bombs.com.
Exactly. Thebomb.com.
Yeah. I love you, Matt. You're the best.
Oh, thank you.
It's been such a pleasure. You are remarkable in terms of your character and integrity, and it's been such a pleasure working with you. I can't wait to collaborate on other things together.
Totally.
I just think you're the bomb.com. You really know your stuff in terms of physiology and science behind body. And I totally have so much respect for you in that way, because there's a lot of trainers out there that don't really understand. Sure. They go through these motions, and it's not that trainers are irresponsible, but you really understand from a fuller perspective of body mechanics and physiology. So that's critical, Dr. Matt.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I try to stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, okay. That was great. And we'll sign off. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. Hit the stop.